Welcome back to another episode of Paddlers People's Podcast. This week I interviewed Corina Gage. If you don't know her, she's one of the top coaches in New Zealand and been around in the paddling scene for a long time. And we kind of talked about when she first started in 1991 and her journey along the way, and also about her coaching now and what she does. So for me, she was the first coach I had, and she still helps me out to this day, just out of her heart, and always willing to help whenever I need. And she also worked with us at Pure OCC this year with our turns, which ended up in a gold medal for the 1500 at SprintNet. So very knowledgeable and also a very good coach in the way she kind of teaches people. So without further ado, let's kick it off.
Yeah, thanks for coming for a chat.
No worries.
So tell us a little bit about your Waka Ama journey, where you started, kind of the experiences and places you've been that's been involved with paddling.
So my very first race was in 1991. I came to, it was outrigger canoeing then, so I came to outrigger canoeing from kayaking and multi-sport racing.
Yeah.
I'd had a very different upbringing, came from outdoor education, grew up around the mountains skiing.
Nice.
And then when my family moved to the metropolis of Turangi, and at that time it was quite a big community, big school, attracted some very skilled teachers.
Yeah.
And so we had a number of teachers on staff who were into outdoor education, and so that was probably the game changer for me as a young Māori woman, getting into outdoor education when everybody else was playing netball and boys were playing rugby. So I got into kayaking at an early age, started working weekends at a local outdoor education centre, the Outdoor Pursuit Centre of New Zealand.
Yeah.
Huge learning curve in terms of upskilling with paddling whitewater. I from there was asked to be a member of a mountaineering expedition, and so we went off to the Himalaya for a year.
Oh, really?
And yep, and was part of an expedition there. We went from one end of the Himalaya to the other, from Sikkim through Bhutan, into India, Nepal, Pakistan, going up through Kashmir and onto the border of China. So I was away for a year, and that was huge in terms of my self-confidence and that motivation, I guess, to I suppose live what would have potentially have been a very ordinary, kind of life in a small community, and to being more motivated to doing more extraordinary things.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is, as well as being picked up by others in terms of your skills and your talents, having that confidence to put yourself out there and take advantage of opportunities was a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
I got more into my kayaking, was paddling at a New Zealand rep level, and so at that time, paddling against Australians, I got called by one of the Australians I paddled against at an international meet, and she asked if I wanted to go and do a race with them, an outrigger canoeing race in Hawaii. I was like, oh, sure, what has to happen? She said, oh, just come a month before, we'll teach you how to paddle. And so the Ngāwahine, or the Molokai race, Kaiwi Channel Crossing, was my first outrigger canoe race.
First outrigger canoe race. Wow.
Yeah, that was real deep end.
Yeah. In terms, you're saying kayaking, what kind of kayaking? Like, was it C1 or? K1 or?
Oh, I practiced. I did a lot of training in C1.
Yeah.
Because one of the little side things happening at that time was in outdoor education centres, Canadian canoeing was just coming into New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so I got sent off to do a course in the States. I did 6 months in the States at a real young age, learning technical skills with a single blade. And so that further on down the track had huge payoff for me in terms of what turned into a coaching career. But whitewater, paddling whitewater, and then more into the multi-sport kayaking, and did a lot of K1. Sarah All and I from Rotorua were the marathon K2 champs for a while there. So a lot of flat water marathon kayak.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And then so after that, Molokai was kind of your start of outrigger canoeing.
It was. I guess the big thing for me at that time, Mitch, was I had up to that point had to spend a lot of time being self-motivated. I was still living down in Turangi, but we lived by the lakeside, so training was easy, but it's cold, and we live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So that self-motivation, particularly through our winter, of getting yourself out there when it's still dark in the morning, and then you get out after your day and it's dark at night. I self-motivated for many years, did well in that, but then with outrigger canoeing, that opened up a whole world of being competitive with a crew. So that team thing, but with the option to be able to do that solo event by yourself. So that was big for me. I still kept a hand in with some multi-sport paddling, and I never actually bought myself an outrigger, an OC1, until very recently. I always just trained in a kayak, so kept my hand in there, kept a hand in with my whitewater mates going to world rafting, in world rafting teams. But yeah, the Molokai was my first race, and I think because it was such an amazing event, that it really put it out there straight away for me how exciting it could be. I didn't have that limitation or that ceiling that a lot of people first put on themselves when they get into our sport, of just being contained within New Zealand, and particularly that getting on in that kind of I don't know, I often visualize it as a little guinea pig in that round wheel thing, going to sprint nationals every year. I think a lot of our people really limit themselves to that.
For sure.
So with that being my first race, that was the world of outrigger canoeing to me. So I just went for that every year. I'd go to an international race thereafter. Because I wanted to build my single skills, my OC1 skills. I went to a solo race first, the Molokai solo. Came second, but it wasn't a good second. And I could see that the ocean skills was a real deficiency for me.
Yeah.
So had my daughter was 14 at the time. So I put her into correspondence school, and off we went to Hawaii. I sold my car. And we lived off that, no problem. The club there gave me accommodation. Had that green dollar thing going on. Had that for a year, and that was good timing. I was still in the open age group at that time, and so I was able to be competitive at a time when I was physically probably at my peak in terms of strength and fitness, and got myself known at that point. Won the Queen Lily race in the one man, and from there got picked up by good teams, and got picked up by Team Bradley at that point.
Yeah.
And so even when I returned to New Zealand, I would still go back and paddle in Hawaii. And so I've done three solos, a few relays. When I say solos, I mean Molokai. About 17, I think.
Wow.
Molokai crossings.
Yeah.
Mostly with Hawaiian crews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Team Bradley's was quite a dominant team back then.
No, we were the foundation members for that. So we were the first of the Bradley teams to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, winning a race like that is like, it's like nothing else. It's to come into Waikiki and have no crews in front of you. It's an incredible experience. And so even now, I still go back and we paddle as a Bradley Masters combination often. So the majority of us are ex-Bradley paddlers.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Got the foot in the door and then capitalize on that. Is there any other races that come to mind apart from kind of the stuff in Hawaii? I remember you talking about the gorge race that you kind of like quite a bit.
Yeah, that's with the gorge downwind challenge. There are 2 races. So you're in Oregon. It's in Oregon and it's on the Columbia River. And there is a smaller club race, which is a 6-man race on one weekend.
Yeah. And
that's a lot of fun. Very similar to going to a club event in New Zealand, where you've got a few very competitive teams up here, and then a larger number of kind of midfield crews. And then the following weekend, a guy runs a single craft race. So he started that race as a surf ski race, and then extended it out to OC1s, so single outrigger canoes and stand-up boards. The amazing thing about that race, so if any of your listeners haven't heard of it, they should definitely go on YouTube, Gorge Downwind.
Yeah.
And it's a surfing race on a river. And so what creates the surf is this huge wind that funnels down this gorge, which in some places is up to half a mile wide.
Yeah.
So the wind funnels down this gorge, and the current is coming against you.
Oh, yeah.
So you're paddling upstream, but the wind velocity is far quicker than the water velocity, the speed of the water.
Yes.
And so you get this amazing continuous surf.
Yeah.
Down this river. And so it's a very cool a cool race in terms of it being very different. And I think that's why it's stuck out for me so much, because I've been to so many different races in Tahiti, around the Pacific, in the States. So that was an outstanding memory.
Yeah, something to put on the bucket list.
Yeah.
I know Tipu was wanting to do it this year, but obviously a few things have happened. Just going back to you talk about New Zealand paddlers kind of getting stuck in this kind of circle of, or not really expanding themselves overseas. And I remember when I met with you, when we had a chat, and you told me to get to Hawaii or Tahiti and try and stay there for a long period of time. Do you have any advice to younger paddlers or stuff that kind of don't really know how to go about that way? Like if they were wanting to travel and do races overseas?
Assuming that people have left school and they're they're a bit more self-sufficient. I think there are people within New Zealand with very good connections, like myself, yourself now, Tupu, so there's lots of good male role models, but also Lara, myself, all of us are, it's easy to find us, you can't hide in New Zealand. And with the nature of our community here, I think it's very achievable, it's realistic for any of these people to be able to make contact with any of us and find out about some of the races, but also get contacts in those places. That sure. Can be the key, is getting hookups there. Unless you organise to go with a team from New Zealand, I always encourage club paddlers who may have even just started out in the sport to go to races like the Queen Lily in Hawaii, in Kona, on the big island of Hawaii, because they're very doable. I think with our crew racing, probably the biggest challenge can be the steering, because our steerers here in New Zealand, it's a challenge for them to be able to learn the skills for that big open rough water steering. But with the races like Queen Lily or Kalani, which is just offshore, it's really no different from paddling on a wind choppy day out from Tauranga Harbour or Oriental Parade or out from Takapuna. If the steersman or steerswoman can handle those conditions, they can handle those conditions in Hawaii. So I think races like that are a great event. And also with events like that, you're going for like a week of events. You're not just going for
that's right.
Sprint racing, and if you don't make it through the first 2-minute heat, it's all over and you're off shopping.
It's a bit of a festival way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so also with our younger people, going to a place which is an enjoyable destination as well as the race. So it's a much bigger picture in terms of the incentive and the motivation to want to go to those places. I think that's important. And also, if you're taking boyfriend or girlfriend or you're younger and wanting to go with your family, it can be much more of an enjoyable family experience. The family's not just stuck at the sprint racing site all day, waiting.
No, that's sweet. So kind of moving on, what kind of led you into like your coaching pathway?
Coaching, as with many of us, Mitch, starts with just happening by default, either because no one else wants to do it, or at some point, even if you are all inexperienced, you're still the most experienced within the crew. And if you're in a small club, there are no one outside. My first club in New Zealand was in Auckland with Taniwha, because I was training with the New Zealand kayak team at that time. And so paddling on Lake Pupuke was easy. So that's in the 90s. There weren't really club coaches as such. That wasn't something that happened in New Zealand. It was more each crew for themselves. And so you might have got assistance or advice from one of the other crews, but we're never coaches as such. And so with my background in high performance already, performing at that higher rep level, I brought that to the sport, to our crew. And then when I moved to Rotorua within a few years, and so the crew we had at that time we had two top basketball players.
Oh, yeah.
One of them, Carolyn Gray, is, I think to date, she may still be the only international All-Stars player we've ever had. Itty Joyce was also in the New Zealand team at that time. We had a top horse rider and equestrian.
Bit of a mixed bag there.
We had a top cyclist.
Yeah.
And a top kayaker, and I steered. So this was very early, early into the 90s. It would have only been about 90, 92, 93 by then. And so at that point, we were winning because we were fitter than everybody else.
Mm.
And that was huge at that time. At the start of our sport, it was more about people's fitness, and spending time crew training together, because we didn't have the depth in the sport at that point. We didn't have people who had grown up through the sport, through the juniors, and then coming through with the skills.
Yeah.
So we came to the sport with a training discipline, and even today, you can teach people skills, but you can't teach them to train. They've either got to have that incentive, that motivation to train, or they don't. For whatever reason, even if it is their parent whipping them to go to training, that's only going to last until they're in the 17 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were winning because we were fitter, and with my background in outdoor education, I was always very technical, always wanting us to get better, and always keeping an open mind as to what we could try, things we could do. And I think that was also a significant point in my development as a coach, because it was the same with the coaching. There wasn't really any ceiling on this is how you should do it, because we didn't have any role modeling up to that point. All my role modeling was from overseas stuff. We weren't just doing things because everybody else did it. We were more inclined to try different things and test different things. Yeah. And I think that's that can be an aspect that is missing from a lot of the coaching that can happen here and in other countries where I work, as people will tend to go more with what others are doing, less inclined to try things for themselves.
That was the biggest kind of coming from like a rugby, volleyball, golf background, where it's kind of like do this is exactly how it's done, and it'll be better, to coming to paddling where it's like feel the water or try this or try that. It was a little bit hard to kind of adapt to in terms of trying to learn. Yeah.
And I would be so bold as to say that I think that is mostly from coaches who are who have come up through paddling and have been a good paddler, and then are trying to move into coaching and haven't had as much, haven't invested as much time into analysing how they do what they do.
Mm.
Yeah, that. So therein you're getting the statements like "feel the water." Those. It's kind of hard as a paddler to immediately put that into physical action, eh?
Yeah. And that's what we noticed when you came in to help us, is kind of getting that physical attributes rather than, you say more power, but then what does that mean, and what does that kind of look like and feel like? So that was a big help for us. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think it's as soon as you've got two or more people, then you've got to create that exact same image throughout every phase of the stroke, eh? That, as you say, what does power mean?
Yeah, because it's easy to say add more power, but how are you actually going to do that is a different story.
Oh, absolutely. And I always, I'm always really big on the idea that it is very rarely, especially at that point at which crews or individuals have stepped over that line to pay money to engage somebody like me, or in the New Zealand coaching circumstances where they put themselves out there to go up against the best paddlers in New Zealand. At that point, intensity is never the issue. You know, when we're saying things like power, you don't actually want people to go head down, ass up, and just go as hard as they can.
Yeah.
At that point, we need people to be smarter. We need them to be doing the equivalent of the perfect golf swing, or the perfect spike, or whatever. And so, how do we get 6 people doing exactly the same thing throughout every phase of the stroke? Yeah. I would suggest it's not by everybody trying to react to the idea of power being intensity, but it's more about how do we increase the boat speed of this one boat that 6 of us are sitting in, and how do 6 people best contribute to making that boat go as fast as it can go.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in terms of like now, your coach, you're full-time coach?
Yep. I have been for a number of years. Going back to your question way back about getting into coaching. So I started off with doing the voluntary thing, like all of us are doing.
Yeah.
And then it just got to the point where it was taking up more time than my paid work, basically. And so I moved into coaching for a living, I don't know, about 8 years ago now. And I don't think I would have been able to do it as an income in New Zealand 20 years ago, but New Zealanders are at that point. Well, actually, a lot of my work is overseas as well. So not just New Zealanders, but certainly within New Zealand, a lot of our community are putting a lot of time, energy, money into higher performance. Yeah. And so at that point, people are prepared to pay for it. I found it really difficult making that change to being paid for something that I'd always done on a voluntary basis. But realistically, I couldn't put the time into it and give up, without giving up my, had to get money from somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so, like I see, you over lockdown and stuff, you did like a few online courses. Is that kind of how you roll with the overseas coaching?
I will be now. I was one of those unfortunate people that lost out on airfares. So at the time of the lockdown, I was supposed to be in Washington. Oh, so I had coaching gigs in Washington, Oregon, Singapore, Hong Kong, number of other places. So unfortunate. I think my unique selling point with international groups is working with coaches. So I do a lot of that here in New Zealand, coaching coaches, supporting them in terms of coaching more effectively. Yeah. So no, I think with the majority of our coaches, not trying to change what people are coaching, but helping our coaches here and internationally to be more effective at communicating their message, giving them different strategies on how they can communicate, not just relying on trying to talk louder if the paddler doesn't understand what's being said. So I'll be moving to doing more of those online workshops for international groups particularly. But also I'm developing at the moment a website so I can do more online critiquing, so people can send me videos. We Zoom workshop, look at them together. What I've done is gone out and taken a lot of clips of myself paddling, just short clips of specific phases of the stroke, so that when I am trying to explain something, I can give them a visual of what I'm talking about. Probably get people like you that I'll film and use people I know as examples as well. But yeah, you can do a lot online with video clips, so some critiquing in that way I can do in New Zealand, but particularly with internationals. But I'm hoping that the coaching of coaches and in New Zealand, developing a stronger base of club coaches. I've just started doing one group, which is a great pilot for me, where they have one person in the club who it's on her to have to do everything because she's the only experienced paddler. So working through with some of the other clubbies, breaking down the tasks of that one person.
Yeah.
So, talking about how you can share those responsibilities between 2 or 3 or 4 of you, so that it's not so overwhelming. You don't have to have one other person become the knower and doer of all things confidently. So we need to do more of that, and I think it's something that can be doing more of internationally. So me doing a demo of working through right from first contact with new paddlers, of working through the equipment safety check, the basic safety stuff, this is the paddle, what to do with it, and just some good basic demos, and then reviewing that and looking at, okay, what were the different tasks, and who feels they could have done, which aspect of those different things that I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because you kind of, if you compare it to say rugby, there's so many resources and stuff that you've kind of just mentioned in terms of that. But it's good to see that you're kind of getting the ball rolling with all that online and coaching kind of aspect.
Yeah, and that's rugby's an awesome example, which I will now use, Mitch, where you have a coach for the front, and the front line. Yeah, they don't rely on just having one coach of everything,
Yeah, that's right. So kind of just winding it up, you got any like personal goals in terms of the next few years or things you want to do?
I know that's real tough.
Apart
because
from what you just said.
Well, with my coaching development, I have always relied on making sure that I go to an international race every year. I go to different places. I hang out with my mates who are top paddlers, top coaches. We share information. So that really has been my kind of key incentive to develop.
Yeah.
And also for my own paddling, my own mental state, keeping myself at least ticking over with my training, and then I'll bump it up, 3 or 4 months prior to going to a race overseas to get myself into as good a condition as I can. So yeah, now that we are restricted with overseas travel, that's a lot tougher. My next goal, hoping that it plays out, that the World Long Distance Nationals will still happen next year.
Yeah.
We've got a strong 50s crew for Long Distance Nationals, a New Zealand crew. And my aim for that crew would be that we're top 3 overall with our 50s crew. And I think that's well within our grasp. So I guess that's my little mini goal, and hopefully be able to get back into the international game sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And then the big picture thing is to try and get some money into my very empty bank account after lockdown, and so get into this website and more online stuff for Waka Coach.
Nice. Moving with technology. I like it.
Oh, and hopefully support you guys to win at Sprint Nationals.
Yeah.
Go Ruamata.
The 3 golds. That's the goal. No, awesome. Thanks for coming on, having a chat. It's good to catch up and get a good insight on the background of yourself.
Oh. Okay, Mitch.
Awesome.
Take care.
Yeah. Same to you.
Ngā mihi. Bye.